All right, now we're recording. Sorry. All right. So basically, what I'd already said was that today we're going to go over background review. What we don't get to today, we'll finish Monday, and then we'll go over micronutrients, which you've already had. The focus will be different, but again, it's not going to be a new slide set, a couple extra added slides, but attendance is optional. Then next week, your lectures are pre-recorded. The Thursday lecture is only an hour and a half lecture. That's to give you 30 minutes of like the actual class time to work on the homework. But you can work on the homework whenever. It is due 5 p.m. Friday. It's actually the discussion homework, so it does not follow due the day of the test. It is due 5 p.m. Friday. And then I will have a Google Doc going of questions that I'm going to prepare for Dr. Law. And you'll be able to enter any questions you have. And she really wants you to enter questions. So try to come up with at least like one question. I will summarize the questions, combine like questions, give it to her. And that should go over the homework, another case, and any questions that were asked. Malnutrition TPNs are some of the hardest things, in my opinion, that you learn in pharmacy school. Where I went to pharmacy school, before we could graduate, we had to go and a fake physician would give us the labs for a patient. We'd have to design a TPN, and that was the number one stressor for all of us in pharmacy school because TPNs are so hard. So I know you have a renal exam coming up the following Monday, but try to use at least the hours you'd usually dedicate to class to watching her lectures and asking whatever questions you have. She is a very serious, to the point regional coordinator. So some of you are going to be working with her. You want to have a good impression with her. And that's what I have to say about that. But again, homework will be due 5 p.m. next Friday. And she does give you time. One of her lectures is shorter to give you time to do that homework. Then you're going to have your exam Monday. I will be posting the information soon, but I can tell you it's going to start at 9:30 a.m. And it does have, I think, 50 questions, and you will be given an hour and a half if you have regular time. And then Dr. Law's attendance is required, but both this upcoming Monday and the next Monday, we're going to only have discussion from 1 to 3. Dr. Rogan does not need his TAs. If you've already made plans thinking that you have discussion at 3 to 5 from 1 to 3, email me. I will excuse those absences since I was giving you late notice. So just shoot me an email if you're usually in the 3 to 5 discussion and you can't make the 1 to 3. And again, I will excuse your absence. But everything else is optional lecture, but it's testable material. Because both Dr. Vias and Dr. Maker added lectures to their sections, I have to get rid of lectures. So we're probably going to be getting rid of some of the hours that are on here for Thanksgiving week. They were optional, and we can still have that review if we needed. Yes, backwards navigation is allowed for Monday's exam. I'm always pro backwards nav, so if they let me decide, you'll have backwards nav. Yeah, and then we'll have lots of reviews. I'll have reviews outside of class too. We'll have our final exam. One thing to note for the final exam is that the updated breakdown, because Dr. Bias forgot the equation sheet for exam 2, there will be 5 extra GI questions on the final exam too, and they're going to be the equation ones, because we have to make sure we test that to meet the curriculum requirements. If we gave you all points for it, we didn't adequately test it. All right, let's get started with our actual lecture. So nutrition, defined, is the process of providing or obtaining food necessary for health and growth. It's also considered a branch of science that deals with nutrition and nutrients, particularly in humans. What is a diet? The sum of food consumed by a person or other organism. So we're technically all on a diet. Like whatever you eat, that is your diet. But socially, we use the term diet to refer to a specific intake of nutrition for health weight management, and or disease control. And that is typically how it'll be used in these lectures. I will talk about specific types of diets that are somehow structured, that patients are somehow structuring what they eat to achieve a certain goal. So the overarching questions are, what is the ideal diet for healthy humans? What is the ideal diet if you have a specific disease state? And what makes a food a good food or a bad food? How should we make decisions on what we eat? And disclaimer, I'm not actually going to answer any of those questions for you. I'm going to share the data of what we know. I'm going to share with you the general consensus of professionals who work in the field of nutrition, if and when a consensus exists. And you can take this knowledge and do with it what you will. I hope it inspires you to continue learning and to continue making decisions on how you will nutritionally guide your patients to be their best selves. So that being said, there are many limitations to clear data in the field of nutrition. As we know, not all experts in the field agree on what is good or what is bad. Some are very against fat. Some are like, no, we need fat. And you can make that claim about anything, eggs, carbs, anything. The experts do not agree. And part of the reason why is because it is so difficult to research nutrition. Why? Why is it so much more difficult to research nutrition? Give me some of your thoughts in the chat box. Why, compared to like researching a drug, what extra limitations exist if you're trying to do a randomized controlled trial on food? Product bias, yes. Everyone has different opinions. Different people are different. Well, different people are different for drugs too, but yeah. Variability between patients, yeah, that would exist for studying drugs. Different metabolisms, yes, that, again, drug metabolism could be different for different people. Differing variations in people's culture and baseline diet. So yes, baseline diet is going to be different for anyone. I want you to think about what I have written here. What do you think happens when we give a placebo group? So the group, we're not actually changing their diet. We're telling them to continue their diet, but we give them a scale and a food log. And we say, start writing down what you're eating, weigh yourself. And we're going to compare you to this other group where we actually change their diet. What happens? Yeah, recall bias happens. So people either don't remember. That happens anytime there's an observational study. People don't accurately remember what they did. Or people will like mindlessly grab a snack and not even think about it and not write it down. People lie. People don't want you to know. If you're writing down, they don't want you to know. Or they're accurately writing down, but they're not eating what they usually do. So one of the top things that happens in nutritional studies, watch out for this anytime a new nutritional study is posted. I saw like at the beginning of the semester, one of you that has me as a friend on Facebook shared an article about intermittent fasting from UCSF. And I noticed the placebo group lost a ton of weight too. And that happens all the time, because if people know that other people are going to be weighing them, then they change their habits whether they mean to or not. They're like, I don't want to write down that I ate an entire pizza, so today I'm going to limit myself to 2 slices of pizza. And then they only write down their 2 slices of pizza and they lose weight too. So the placebo group is also losing weight. Whereas also, what's different in nutrition for a placebo group versus the study group that might not happen in drugs? You probably know what you're eating, right? Like you probably can't be blinded. If they're putting you on a ketogenic diet and they're like, you can't eat these foods, and it's like every single carb that's ever existed and like fruit and all this stuff, you probably know that you're not eating any fruit. You probably know you're not eating any bread. You probably know you're not eating any carbs, versus the other group, they know they're eating. So it's really difficult to blind. Whereas a drug, you can give them 2 like blue capsules. One doesn't have any drug in it. One's just salt or, nothing. And then the other one actually actual drug. So patients, it's much harder to blind those trials. So there's already bias that exists. Oh. All right. And then let's see what some of the other things you said. different to remember all the different foods people eat over time. I like how you like hype each other up. And so that's so, you know, good vibes, whatever. Yes, so great. What else fuels nutritional research? Well, one is access to food, which we'll talk about more even later in the lecture. But if you tell people to go eat, you know, whatever, and then the control group, they're like, you must eat this, they're likely providing the food or giving very structured guidelines or something, like ketogenic diets, some plant-based diets, some like pre-made food diets. They're expensive. And for the participants to afford it, they are either given money to buy food with or they are given the food. That is not, you can't take that study results and say that's best for any patient that comes to our clinic, unless you're planning to pay for that patient's food, unless you're planning to give the patients, you know, a specific, like provide food for them or money to buy food. So it's really hard to take a lot of the nutritional information and apply it to the general population because the controlled environment does not reflect the real world. That brings us to this. Does anyone notice anything about what is on the dollar menus at fast food restaurants? Like, do you see salads here? I'm seeing fried chicken. I'm seeing lots of sausage. I'm seeing, you know, cheeseburgers and, you know, really dairy-filled, like coffee options. Why is it that the, you know, really meaty, cheesy, fatty, saturated fat foods are what is cheapest? Why is that? You'd think lettuce would be cheaper than hamburger meat, right? Why do we rarely see salads on here unless it's like a little bit of salad and a ton of fried chicken or something? Why? I know there's some people here, can't freeze lettuce, longer shelf life, preservatives. All that's true, but there's one big, it's not real meat. You can't fake a salad. I like that, that one's funny. Not a color that stimulates appetite. Processed, I keep saying, government subsidies, someone finally said it. $20 billion from the United States government goes to the food industry. And this is a breakdown of where it goes. Fruits and vegetables get less than 1% of that, you know, $20 billion. Meat and dairy gets 63%. Grains, which typically makes our oil, sugar, starch, oil, which is what's, you know, we're frying our chicken in, we're frying our French fries in. It is, you're still hyping each other up. That is where the government's money is going. So whenever you're paying $7 for a salad, it's you paying for that salad. When you pay $1 for a hamburger, it's usually like the government is paying $6 for that hamburger, and then you're only paying the $1 to $3, etc. So, you know, the cost of the item is actually the same. It's just you're not paying for near as much of that item. So access to food actually drives us to make to go for options that, you know, people who are looking for nutritious food may not reach for. And also what you said about being able to freeze meat, etc. But like some fast foods are like fresh, never frozen. So I mean that's the same with them as well. All right. Another point to keep in mind as we go forward, anecdotal evidence does not equate proof. Please at no point during this lecture say like, well, I've been doing this diet that you're saying has so many limitations for 5 years now and I've never felt better, etc. Well, that's great for you. But that does not mean that everyone else is going to thrive on that diet. It doesn't just mean those limitations don't exist. That doesn't mean that your diet is appropriate for every other human on this planet. Doesn't mean that we need to say this diet is the diet to go to. I see that all the time in the nutrition community. People are like, oh, well, you know, my uncle's been doing keto for 40 years and he's a champion weightlifter, etc. Or I've been vegan my whole life and I am just absolutely thriving. That's great, but I work in respiratory. Like that is my number one specialty. Nutrition's my number two. And I see people who come in who are over 100 years old and they're smokers. That doesn't mean we need to recommend smoking to everyone. That doesn't mean smoking is the reason they're over 100 years. So keep in mind, anecdotal evidence does not equate proof. And another important concept: what makes a specific food healthy or unhealthy? Give me your opinion in the chat box. If you were to take a food and say this is a healthy food, what makes it healthy? Think of a healthy food. What makes it healthy? Color. It's green. Freshness. Balanced macronutrients, vitamins, how it makes you feel after you eat it. Vegetable healthy, fried food unhealthy, vitamins, fats, organic, beneficial to the human body, the amount of sugar it has. Healthy is different from everyone. Some people consider it a vegetable, etc. So, social construct, processing, nutritional value, whether or not it costs a lot, people's perception through media. So, as you can see, there's a lot of different ways to evaluate food. We're going to talk about some of those, but let's get started. I saw someone already mention iceberg lettuce. Is iceberg lettuce a healthy food? You can have 1 cup has only 10 calories. Fat-free food, low sodium. I mean, 2 grams of carbs. It depends on how strict you are on carbs, is whether or not it's a low carb food. It has carbs, but 1 gram of that is fiber. So it has 1 net carb. Looks like it's got 15% of your vitamin K. Is it healthy? Yes or no? Of course, it's cheap too. It's like mostly water, I think, not a lot of benefits. For an entire cup, there's essentially no macro or micronutrients. No, I'm seeing a lot of people are messaging me privately and some people are doing everyone, but I'm seeing both yes and no. And people say like, of course, it's cheap, and then no, etc. What about this? It's a smoothie from Jamba Juice. It is a peanut butter banana smoothie. It's got 630 calories for 22 fluid ounces. That's like 2 3/4 cup. So we're looking at a higher volume here than we did the last one. But it's got 23 grams of fat, 290 milligrams of sodium, lots of potassium, 30% of what we need for potassium. You're looking at the vitamin breakdown, there's a lot more vitamins in here, but 53 grams of sugar, 38 grams, 76% of protein based on the USDA guidelines. People are saying no, big sugar, too much sugar. Some would say not healthy because of high fats and sugars, but I see it as healthy because it's a smoothie. Yes and no. Yes, if we're considering just the fresh fruit, but no, because of the extra sugar Jamba Juice adds. All foods are great foods. I feel you there. Healthy if you have no sugar in the rest of your diet. So let's talk about how we can actually evaluate foods and whether we call them nutritious or not. But remember, as we go forward, the language that we use surrounding food has a strong psychological impact on the patients we treat. A French fry has never, gone and shoplifted a gun and then went and, shot someone or something. Like a French fry has no inherent moral value. So again, I started in nutrition by working in eating disorder clinics. So my foundation was built on the language people using, psychologically impacting people to the point that they actually kill themselves over diet culture. I had patients die because they could not recover from the perception they had around food and eating and body image. So be very careful when you use foods. I urge you, whenever you try to describe these foods, don't use good and bad. I'm not talking about like vegan ethics and how there's ethical implications, but inherently food itself has no moral value. It, like a French fry has not it itself has not killed someone. It is accumulation effect whenever people have atherosclerosis or heart attacks, etc. But one French fry, unless you're like allergic to potatoes, is likely it's not going to do the damage. So be very careful and try to use very objective words. A food is nutritious. It is high in calcium. It's, et cetera, et cetera. Or this food has low nutritional value and high trans fats, et cetera, which we don't need more of, et cetera. Whenever you're describing food, I just urge you, as you take notes, et cetera, kind of watch the language you're using and check with yourself as, would this be a healthy language to use with the patient to actually achieve your goal? Or would you be instilling a layer of guilt in them if they ever reached for this food? So now that we've said that, we've got ways to evaluate foods for nutritional purposes. We're going to start with caloric density. What is a calorie, other than tiny creatures that live in your closet that sew your clothes a little bit tighter every night? They are a unit of energy. Calorie with a lowercase c is the amount of energy required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. So a capital C calorie is what we just talk about when we're talking about the calories in food. You'll notice on nutrition labels, the C is capitalized, but like all the words are capitalized. But it's specific that the C is capitalized. That means we're 1K lowercase c calories. So nutrition facts labels typically label nutrition guidelines for human use calories, big C, amount of calories in a particular food product is technically equivalent to the amount of energy that you need to burn off that food or to negate eating that food. So caloric density is one way to analyze food. The iceberg lettuce that we talked about had very low caloric density. You could eat a cup of it for only 10 calories, where the next food you were at over 100 calories for a cup of it. So if you're comparing foods for caloric density, there's a few different ways to compare them. First, you have the amount of calories in a specific weight or volume of food, or the reverse. If you compare, this is 1 pound of each of these foods. This is how much calories are in 1 pound. You can see different pictures here. The top one, the caloric density of food, or calories per 100 grams. 100 grams of cucumber only has 15 calories. 100 grams of chocolate chip cookies have 454 calories. And then you see next to it, they're showing you a plate of 85 calories. They're showing you the difference in volume. Caloric density is a ratio. You can make one side of the ratio stable and then compare the other side. So you can either compare how much volume is in 85 calories as shown, or 150 calories right below it with the nuts versus the cherry tomatoes. And then you can compare how much of that food you get for that calorie value. Or you can say, this is how much weight of the food, and this is how many calories it is. So caloric density can be important for people who are just simply calorie counting. You can see it fills up your stomach differently. So 400 calories of veggies is going to completely fill up your stomach, where 400 calories of oil and fat is your stomach's barely going to notice it's there. So that is one way to evaluate foods. And this is driven by those that look for a calorie deficit. That's the idea that the driver of weight loss is consuming less calories than you burn. Now you have just a baseline of how many calories you burn a day. My daughter is yelling outside the room. I apologize if you can hear that. Baseline just by breathing. You can be a total couch potato if this quarantine you woke up and then you stayed in bed and just opened your laptop and turned on Netflix and just stayed there and only got up to pee, etc. You're still burning a baseline, even though you didn't move, even though you didn't do anything that day. That's your basal metabolic rate, or your total daily energy expenditure. And then you're going to add any movement that you actually do. And then if you purposely go out and run and exercise, etc., that's more. So that's your calories burned. You can take your calories consumed, compare it to your calories burned, and get a net calories. And the idea is that a calorie is somewhere, or a pound of fat is somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 calories, depending on which organizational guidelines you go through. So for every net negative 2,500 or 3,000 calories, you will lose 1 pound of fat. So you can calculate this online. You can just type in TDEE calculator or BMR calculator, and you can calculate your baseline. Some of the TDEE ones will go a step further and ask you how active you are, and it'll come up with a baseline that includes your activity, so that way you don't have to add in specific workouts. If your average activity is typically the same from day to day or like weekly, TDEE takes out a step, but it's not as concise as doing BMR plus your active energy. Before we move on, one of the critiques of looking into caloric deficit is everyone's BMR truly the same? Is everyone's TDEE truly the same? If I had a twin and we have other lifestyles, like let's say I have a really stressful life, everything else is the same. Our age is the same. Let's say our sex assigned at birth is the same, our height's the same, our weight is similar, then, you know, I'm really stressed and she's not. I have other issues going on. I have an intolerance to a certain type of food that causes inflammation and she doesn't. Do these impact our BMR? And that is not captured in these equations. So there's more to calories in, calories out. Do our calories out actually vary from person to person based on different things? And BMR uses age, sex or gender, height, and weight. Anytime I mention that something is different between the sexes, you know I'm going to go into what about our transgender and intersex patients? What biological differences between male and female patients determine differences in metabolism? Let me know. Muscle. What drives muscle? Hormones, muscle mass, hormone. What specific hormone is the key responsible for estrogen? Testosterone. Testosterone was the one I was looking for. And in transgender patients, depending on where they are and choose to be and their age and etc. in transition, what we're looking for is presence of testosterone. So if the patient is on an androgen blocker, like they're blocking their testosterone, then we are more likely to calculate their BMR as female. If they were assigned female at birth and have not gone through any hormonal transitions, then we typically go with the sex assigned at birth. But if we have started androgen blockers or if we have started adding testosterone, then we tend to go with male. Now that is not clear cut for everyone. If you notice that you are calculating BMR for someone and you are someone who chooses to do calories in, calories out, and it's just not lining up, you can try messing around with the BMR to see, like, based on, you know, how long they've been on testosterone, adjust the calories for the BMR or the TDEE a little bit more. Now, what about our intersex patients? These are patients that are born with both male and female characteristics. There's a plethora of chromosomal situations that arise in this. Does anyone know who this is? The person in green here. Her name is Castor Semenya. She is an intersex patient who was assigned female at birth. So when she was born, the doctor said, it's a girl. That's what's on her birth certificate. She is a gold medal Olympic runner. She has multiple gold medals under her belt. This past year, they've actually banned her from running in women's sports unless she starts taking a testosterone blocker. It was found that she is actually an intersex athlete who has XY chromosomes, but again, she was assigned female at birth and her testosterone is high. And so she has actually been blocked from running certain races. There's one race that was left out. I think she's decided that she is going to run that race that doesn't have this law applied to it, or this rule applied to it by the International Association of Athletic Federations. And so she is going to continue running, and she is not going to take any kind of drugs to change that. But these are all considerations that we need to have, that, you know, this person that was born female has been blocked from running in a sport because of presence of testosterone. And the reason they believe that is at a disadvantage is because she has greater ability to put on muscle faster, etc. All right. Oh, and if you'd like more information on this, plug to join Pride Health Alliance, one of my organizations. We go through transgender and intersex patient care quite a bit as part of our philosophy. All right, common diets that focus on caloric density. We've already talked about calories in, calories out, or any kind of calorie restrictive diet, a diet that focuses on staying below a max number of calories without regard to exercise. Several of the diets we're going to discuss later on can be combined with one of the above dieting styles. So you can be low carb and then also stay below a certain number of calories that you're trying to eat, or try to get your net calories under a certain level. You can be high carb, low fat, do the same, etc. So it's not just calories in, calories out. You can focus on caloric density in several other ways. Proponents will use low caloric densities of recommended foods to promote a diet such as whole food, plant-based diet. Will take the fact that, fruits and vegetables fill your tummy up more than cheese and their calorie. All right, micro and macronutrients. Now we've already discussed micronutrients in quite a bit of detail, and this is when I apparently got logged out of Kahoot because of time. So let me log back in. We're gonna do Kahoot to test how much you know, and whoever, I don't know, this is my first time doing Kahoot, but if there's like a way to give someone a prize, maybe I'll give you a prize, I don't know. All right. I had it all ready to go, and now it's not. Okay, let me move this over here, and then let me share. Share. Google Chrome. Share. All right. So get your Kahoot ready. There's top 3 winners at the end. All right, we'll see how it goes. I'm playing around with thanks. Oh, but I don't know who's okay. You can just tell me if you're the winner. You can just tell me that you're tofu for you, or I love food. Aw, boba. Subsidies for fries. Some of these are hilarious. Okay. I want to sleep too. My daughter slept like 15 hours last night. She just like passed out at 6. I was so jealous. There's a lot of like sushi references here. We've got a lot of sushi fans. All right. Are we ready to start? Oh no, they're still popping up. Okay, well, hopefully hopefully we're ready to start. Sorry if you didn't join in time. All right. Oh, I didn't realize it gave you the question, like time to read it before it. So 20 seconds might have been too long. Oh, looks like we're good. Okay, some of these have 20 seconds and some have 10, because I was just seeing what's best, and it looks like 20 would have been best. So you might want to X out of the downloads at the bottom. Oh. I don't know. There. Thanks. Oh, there we go. I didn't see who it was. Congratulations. It was like food is something. Food is life. Oh no, it was an upset position. Okay, apparently it's 20 seconds for all of them, because I thought. Oh. Everyone's like started with a P there. It was like pumpkin, PR, whatever. I tricked you. I changed it from what was on the exam. I did too many questions. I think we're like over it now. 2 more, and then I'll do less in the future. Upset. Okay. Hey. All right. PR and pumpkin runners up. All right. The PR pumpkin, be gay and depressed student, email me and I'll give you a bonus point on the final exam. And then Buddy, who's Buddy? Email me and you'll get a prize and a bonus point. And then whoever positions was, you were at the top like a lot. So just go ahead and email me. We'll give you a bonus point too. All right, cool. Let me go back to this. Here we go. Let me get the chat box back up again. It disappears every time. All right. What was I gonna say? Yes, we'll take a break now for a little bit. Come back at like 10:55 and we'll start on macronutrients. And you all can email me if you need a bonus point or whatever. And then we can determine our prize winners. Here, I need to write down. Let's see, we had Chance and then it was Buddy. Those are our prize winners so far. And then I'll see you in like 6 minutes. Everyone's opinion on balloon draw. I know it's like so last week. As you come back, is it worth $300 or is it just the bad attitude? Balloon drama. Or am I muted? I'm not. Bye, cat. Not worth 300. It's the bad tooth for me. I know. Where was I? I was somewhere waiting on something, and like someone was like, "Why are all of your videos about balloons?" And I was like, "I didn't choose this. The balloon life chose me." Maybe if she was nicer, right? The thing is, let me turn on my music. My music. Okay. The thing for me was like, yeah, all her clients are rich and they're paying for it. It'd be one thing if like she's like, why doesn't anyone buy this? And then her prices are 300. But people, I mean, rich people are paying for it. So, you know, live your life, girl. But then don't her in the she was like asking people to do it with like time constraints and stuff that she doesn't give herself. So that was it was that for me. All right, let me get this ridiculous background off. There, I'm back on my island. I know, I was living for the duets too. My favorite was the guy who made a trash H, like he made an H out of trash. He's like, this is my trash H. I charge this much. And he's like, and now this is it sneezing. And he was like spraying a water bottle. I sent it to one of my friends who doesn't have TikTok. And they're like, Erica, what did you just send me? I laughed hysterically. I'll have to find it and show it on here. But like the trash H, that sneeze, it like combined everything that's been on my For You page other than the Arby's TV and the moms. This is not beer, it's hops water. Highly recommend if you like hoppy things though. I realized I was drinking it when I was lecturing to the P1s and someone private messaged me and she's like, are you just throwing back a beer right now? And I was like, no, I wish, but no. All right, we're back. Let's get started. Back in the learning zone. I think everyone messaged me except one person. I'm still waiting on one of my bonus point winners. So if you were in the top 5, don't forget to email if you want bonus. I mean, all right. What are the 3 main macronutrients? Just real quick, start throwing up proteins, fat, carbs. Does anyone know what the 4th one is? There's actually one more. It's not fiber. Fiber is technically a carbohydrate. Alcohol. Yes. Alcohol actually is not a protein, fat, or carb. Sugar alcohols are considered a carbohydrate, but alcohol, ethanol itself, ETOH, is actually its own macro. And each type of macro has its own, the numbers next to it are the calories per gram. So carbohydrates have 4 calories per gram. Protein has 4 calories per gram. Fat has 9 calories per gram, part of why it has been demonized in the past. And alcohol actually has 7 calories per gram. So whenever you're counting calories, basically you can take the grams of fat, the grams of carbs, the grams of protein, multiply them by how many, calories per gram they have, and you'll get the total calories. Or you can just look at the nutrition facts and I've already done that math for you. Keep in mind they round to the nearest whole gram. So calories will be off, yes. All right, calories may be off plus or minus 2 from your own calculation. So let's start with carbohydrates. I personally love carbs, and so both of these are accurate representations of my inner carb-loving self. So carbohydrates are primarily found in plant-based food, with the exception of milk has lactose, which is a sugar, making it a carb. The American nutrition labels include the following as carbohydrates: fiber, sugars, and then they have updated the requirements to include blank added sugars, but it is something that you can be grandfathered out of. So if you haven't updated your label since before that, if you haven't anything about your packaging, if it hasn't been updated since before the law came out, you don't have to reprint all your packaging. So if you don't see it, that means it just hasn't been updated packaging. And then sugar alcohols, you're not necessarily required to list sugar alcohols. Some choose to, because there are certain diets that calculate net carbs, and sugar alcohols, we'll talk about in a second, aren't always included. So they know that some people who are like super strict on carbs may prefer to see the sugar alcohols as well. What is not typically listed is starch. So if you notice, all of these things are listed and then the carbohydrates is still much higher, it's likely starch component. So simple versus complex carbohydrates. This is a very, very simplified explanation. Those of you who have nutrition majors from undergrad are probably rolling your eyes at this, but simple carbs are typically added to foods with the exception of lactose and milk, raw sugar, brown sugar, corn syrup, glucose, fructose, sucrose, fruit juice concentrates, where complex foods are high fiber whole foods. So we're talking about our fruits, our vegetables, our nuts, our beans, our grains. Glycemic index is a number assigned to a food as an indicator of the predicted impact on blood sugar or blood sugar metabolism. So these, some dietitians that specialize in treating diabetes and diabetic patients will often refer to glycemic index. They'll assign you a number of points you can have for the day, and you kind of count how many points. My dad does have type 2 diabetes, and he at one point had a dietitian who was big on the glycemic index. And then they had a training for certain people at Pacific that like we got extra money if we started seeing patients through this program. And I was invited, and then I don't know, whatever. I don't know if we just quit or like pandemic and lots of other things happened or what. But I haven't actually seen any patients doing this yet. But the program used glycemic index. So at one point, Pacific was going to use glycemic index when it saw patients in a certain aspect. But a fruit or vegetable or just a food product that has less than 55 or less is considered low, and medium 56 to 69, high 70 and above. And you can see here, like a white bagel is definitely considered high, while celery, broccoli, asparagus, a lot of the vegetables are considered low. But basically, again, it's a number assigned to indicate the perceived effect on blood sugar. A lot of limitations to this, however. You look at individual foods and not combining foods and how they affect the body and blood sugar. It doesn't consider how the food is prepared. It just gives you a number. It doesn't tell you if it's like cooked broccoli or raw broccoli or anything like that. It doesn't consider how much you eat. So eating a bite of an apple and eating 5 apples is probably not going to impact your blood sugar in the same way. And only includes carbohydrate containing foods, doesn't consider nutrient content, just the carbohydrate component. So several limitations to using glycemic index, but it is a potential starting point for explaining food and explaining the impact on what you eat on how your insulin and blood sugar are regulated. All right, let's talk about fiber and net carbs. Soluble fiber, there's several different types of fiber. This breaks it down in 2 main umbrellas, but fiber is not just one thing. Soluble fiber is not just one thing. There are several different compounds that constitute fiber. Soluble fiber dissolves into gel, which adds bulk to your food. It slows digestion. So whenever people are saying, you know, increase your fiber and it'll help with weight loss, the idea isn't actually it's changing your metabolism, it's changing how you dissolve food. It slows digestion, which actually allows you to feel satiated longer. You'll feel full longer. It'll be longer before you get hungry again, in theory. And so it's counted as grams on the nutrition label, and it's counted into overall calories. However, the caveat there is you don't actually absorb it, and so you don't need to burn it off, you just need to pass it. Insoluble fiber attracts water into the stool, allows stool to pass quicker, easier through the digestive tract. So whenever patients with GI issues are told to increase their fiber, this is the one that actually is going to help with GI issues. And then we have our net carbs. Fiber does not have the same effect on blood sugar as other types of carbs. So if you're eating raw sugar and you're eating something that's extremely fibrous with really low in sugar, it's not going to affect your blood sugar the same. Fiber is going to help stabilize blood sugar, whereas sugar is going to, spike it. So that's why many other countries and diets consider carb content without fiber. So the calculation for net carbs is total carbs minus some percent of fiber minus some percent of certain sugar alcohols. And it depends on the dietitian, the branch, whatever, as to what that percent is. One of the most common ones I see is this one. Net carbs is total carbs minus fiber minus sugar alcohols. And then it breaks it down, and it's all sugar alcohols if it's one of these, and half the sugar alcohols if it's one of these. And that's because sugar alcohol does not have the same insulin effect as pure sugar. So there's a star on this slide. I want you to know this equation for the exam, but keep in mind that if you see other equations, that doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means a different a different nutrition association came up with a different calculation. But this is the one we're going to use. I'm going to give you the equation, but I'm not going to give you the list of sugars, and then I'm going to give you a nutrition label that looks like this. And so you'll just look into this, and then who can tell me using this equation, how many net carbs we have. We're doing 23, the total carbs minus the fiber, 13. And then it's just, do we use all of the sugar, alcohol or not? So all of it, yes. So 23 minus 13 minus 6. 23 minus 13 is 10, minus 6 is 4, thank you. 4. So this, at first, it looks like you got 23 grams of carbs, which someone may look at and say, that's a lot of carbs. But in diets that focus on net carb intake, we're only having 4 net carbs. So it depends on if you look at carbs as a whole or if you're looking at net carbs into like how carb rich this food actually is. So our nutrition facts, here's another one. This one, this compares a nutrition label from a different country to a nutrition label here in America. You can see fiber is listed separately from carbohydrate, but the sugar obviously is still a carbohydrate. And fiber spelled R-E because they're so fancy being all British or European or whatever. Carb-focused diets. So diets that we will be discussing these further when we talk about specialty diets in the outpatient setting in a couple weeks. But keep in mind, whenever you hear like high carb, low fat, that's what HCLF stands for. Typically, you hear of that in the vegan community. High carb, low fat encourages carbs. They encourage you to eat a lot of carbs. 80-10-10, that is where 80% of your diet comes from carbs, 10 from protein, and 10 from fat. The starch solution, also highly plant-based, focuses on the fact that all great civilizations that led to where we are today, Inca thrived off of corn, and different ones thrived off of potatoes, and there's some that thrive off of rice. It focuses on the fact that where we got to how we are today, we thrived off some kind of starch. So that's the point of that. Then carb cycling is like off by itself, because on some days you are to eat a really high carb diet, and then some days you're supposed to eat a really low carb diet with that one. So that one's kind of like in between, depending on what day you're on. Limits carbs, just if you hear of a low carb diet, obviously. LCHF, the opposite of HCLF, low carb, high fat. Ketogenic, the like big dog of don't eat carbs ever, other than like the 0 carb carnivore diets. Those are interesting. Atkins and Eco Atkins. Atkins is a low carb diet. Eco Atkins is the plant-based version of Atkins. Why don't we do anything with the 1 gram of sugar for the nutrition label? Because that is included in the total carbohydrate. So the 1 gram is part of the 23, and the 13 is part of the 23, and the 6 is part of the 23, and then the rest is starch and other carbohydrates that aren't listed here. So basically the 1 gram of sugar is still included. It's part of the 4. Where the answer was 4, the 1 gram of sugar is part of that 4. Does that make sense? I attended a conference where they told you not to ask, does that make sense? But like, I don't know how else to have people give me a yes or no on if I explain that clearly. Wait, can you explain it one more time? Yes. So, okay, I'm getting a lot of notes. I apologize. So 23 grams, everything that's indented after it is part of that 23. So the dietary fiber is part of the 23, the 1 gram of sugar is part of the 23, the erythritol is part of the 23. To get net carbs, that is diets that focus on carbohydrates that they feel negatively impact your health or your weight or whatever they're counting carbs for, whether it's diabetes management or weight loss, etc. A lot of them will use net carbs because they feel that fiber doesn't negatively impact your glucose control or your weight. So they will take the total carbohydrates, they will subtract fiber. So then they subtract the 13. The sugar, they feel like that still does negatively impact your blood glucose or your weight. So they don't subtract it, it stays. So it's still part of the 10 that we have left. And then the sugar alcohol, they are saying that that does not have the same impact on blood glucose, insulin, and weight that sugar does. This is like a fake sugar. Like if you get something that's sugar free, but it's still sweet, it typically has a sugar alcohol in it or a natural like low calorie sweetener. So they're saying this doesn't impact weight or whatever. So they're subtracting it as well. They do not subtract that 1 gram of sugar. So when you take 23 minus 13 minus 6, you get 4. That 1 gram of sugar is still part of the 4. The other 3 are probably starch. Does that make sense now? I will continue explaining it if I need to. I will gladly do that. Okay, I got one person say yes. There's a few other people that said no earlier. Hopefully you'll stop me. Okay. So we were talking about diets that limit carbs. What do, I was planning to ask this later, but we'll go ahead and ask it. What do like the 80-10-10 diet or the high carb, low fat vegan diet, etc., have in common with ketogenic and like LCHF, etc.? What do those, like the two, you think of them as polar opposites, but they have something in common? No one's answering. The thing they have in common is they low protein, not necessarily, ketogenic tends to have a lot of protein. Ketones, low carb, high fat doesn't necessarily put you in ketones. Unprocessed, well, I know some ketos that thrive off of cheese, so not necessarily unprocessed because cheese is very processed, but but they don't have high carb and low fat together. Like protein is really not, other than like the 80-10-10 does limit protein, but they don't have carb and fat together. Like you're not limiting both, or you're not eating a lot of both, you're eating a lot of one and not the other. And so it switches. So it's saying that your body runs 2 different ways. It runs either off of carbs or fat. And then the other one messes with that, is the idea kind of behind both of them. And it's like if you're eating sugar with not a lot of fat, fat blocks your cell's ability to process carbs the same way as if the fat's not present. And then if you're, focusing on fat, carbs will block your body from being able to process the fat. They don't work well together, is the idea behind a lot of these diets. And some just, it's dependent on which direction you want to go. Do you want to focus on the carb and not the fat, or do you want to focus on the fat and not the carb? But the thing they have in common is that they limit eating carbs and fats together for weight and glucose metabolism, etc. All right, let's move on to fats. Types of fats, trans, don't seek this out. Keep in mind, I didn't put the bad fat. I said, we don't need to seek this out for nutritional gain. So small amounts do occur naturally in some animal and animal milk products, including human breast milk. So they're typically less than 10% of fat in an animal product is going to be trans. It's even smaller if you're eating chicken or pork. And those trans fats have been found to potentially have benefits whenever they are kind of studied on their own. There's very little studies on naturally occurring trans fats, but what does exist show that there might be some benefit from eating it. Obviously, we're not going to tell an infant to stop drinking breast milk because there's trans fat in it. If the infant has access to breast milk, it's typically considered beneficial. Whenever you hear of trans fat and it is villainized, we're typically referring to the artificial kind, the kind that has undergone some kind of hydrogenation to increase the shelf life of a product. The World Health Organization has called on countries to flat out ban this type of trans fat, and several have either banned it or highly regulated it, such as Canada, Brazil, Taiwan, and many countries in Europe. US is not on that list, but they're trying to move it that way. They have allowed products that are made without trans fat to advertise that on their labeling. Types of fats, saturated. These are solids at room temperature. Meats, particularly red meats, lower in lean poultry and fish. Cheeses, milks, butter, margarine, shortening, and tropical oils. You may have heard, if you've ever been a big like Jenna Marbles fan, she went like for a year where she was obsessed with coconut oil and would repost all these coconut oil slides, and then a lot of other people jumped on the coconut oil bandwagon, and it became this big and I mean, she probably got it from somewhere else. She didn't necessarily start it, but it became this like huge, like pro coconut oil phase for a while. And then a lot of nutritionists and physicians who may or may not have, yes, I know I missed Jenna. I miss her too. But I hope she's living her best life. You don't like Kermit? Okay. Back on track. Yes, we will get to coconut oil in a second, but some people think it is an exception. So should we avoid saturated fats? You can see here, none of these were created by me. I stole these from the internet. It has been found that populations who eat the most saturated fats have the highest rate of heart disease, but we need to keep in mind what else those countries do. So what are y'all are cracking me up. What are some other considerations for the countries that eat the highest rate of saturated fat? They also tend to have the lowest activity level. They tend to eat less vegetables in general, so they're not necessarily balancing out that saturated fat with lots of fiber and lots of things to help balance the absorption of fat in our gut. There are several things. And then you can see here, as I mentioned, a lot of people like good fat, and they actually have like wings on it, and bad fat with like devil horns. I recommend not using that in any, I mean, do what you want, but I recommend not using that in any information that you give to patients, because again, we don't want to go overboard and psychologically damage them. We'll talk more about how that actually leads to more binge eating and more overeating. But yes, you can see like normal diet rich in cis unsaturated fats, diets rich in saturated fats, diets rich in trans fats. You've got the American Heart Association with the good, the bad, the ugly. What is a good fat? Not as good fat, really bad trans fats, etc. And like some of these have saturated fats as like a check mark, like this is good. And then unsaturated fats, they have an X next to some of them. So you can see there's a lot of differences in opinions here, and we're going to talk about what leads to some of those differences in opinions, and I will let you kind of come up with your own decision on whether or not you support the consumption of saturated fat or seeking it out. First, before we go over these, let's have a refresher on cholesterol. HDL, desirable, we want that, that's good, we like her. LDL, not as much, we're not as big of a fan. We kind of want ours to be lower. Triglycerides, also want those to be lower. Total cholesterol, we want those to be lower. But one time I was in pharmacy school, I had been a whole food, plant-based vegan for like 4 months, and I was at a health fair and they tested my cholesterol and it kept giving the error like too low to read. And I thought I was flexing on everyone. And then I went and got my HDL checked and it was way too low. So keep in mind that that doesn't necessarily, you still want your HDL to be high enough. But yeah, your cholesterol, typically we want it to be lower. Yeah, the error I got was under 100. Trans fat, is it banned in California? There are some products that are still made with trans fats, but I don't believe in California you can produce them. But you can still purchase some hydrogenated oil products, and you might still see hydrogenated oil products used in like restaurant industries. But trans fat definitely still exists in the US. Oh, where did I go? All right. And then we have classifications of lipoproteins. We have really low density lipoprotein, very low density. The verdict is still out on the level of density of our low density lipoproteins, which ones are actually that harmful and which ones aren't. They're doing a lot more studies on LDLs, the various sizes of LDLs. They're finding perhaps that some types of LDLs aren't as bad. And so maybe we need to start in the future, like 10 years from now, you may see LDL, or even sooner, you may see LDL broken down even further on blood panels to some of these other classifications of lipoproteins, and which ones are less harmful and more harmful, which one's more likely to cause a cardiac event, etc. All right, not all saturated fats are created equal. I haven't written the question on this slide yet. I'll let you know in the study guide if there's a specific acid I want you to know, but these are all types of saturated fats. All saturated fats are acids, and the most common is stearic acid. The effect on LDL varies from study to study. It has weak conversion to oleic acid, which is an unsaturated acid, which is found to be beneficial. That's like our omega-9s. Palmitic acid, this is the one that's most commonly consumed in the American diet. It's high in dairy, red meats, palm oils. It increases larger LDL particles. Verdict's still out on how we feel about the different sizes of LDL. Some claim it's not as bad. The stearic acid, we know that one increases LDL with no known effect on HDL. Lauric acid, the longest medium chain fatty acid. We're going from long chain to short chain, by the way, and why that's important will come up in a second. But this is the longest medium chain. So the other ones are long. This lauric acid is the longest medium chain, raises total cholesterol, but that includes an increase in HDL. Caprylic acid, medium chain, could have anti-seizure properties. This one is combined with the ketogenic diet. If you hear of the ketogenic diet, you probably know that it started off as an anti-epileptic diet. We particularly at the time tried to increase this particular type of saturated fatty acid because it could have anti-seizure properties. And we're improving insulin sensitivity and metabolism. Caprylic acid, medium chain, absorbed quickly, bypasses the liver, metabolizes quickly. Capric acid, also medium chain. You're noticing all the ones that start with cap, medium chain, no cap. Also quickly, and these three are found in coconut oil, which are purported to have why coconut oil is different from the others. It has different acids that make up the saturated fat. So while it's still solid at room temperature, while it's still considered a saturated fat, people who are pro coconut oil, which I'm not telling you to be, I'm just saying, the people who are, tend to cite the fact that it has a different acid breakdown than red meats, than dairy, etc., and that the types of the medium chain fatty acids that are found in coconut oil tend to have more beneficial properties and less impact on LDL and negative impact on HDL. And then we've got our short chain. Some of these aren't actually in our diet, our guts produce them. And so this one is produced in the colon, the butyric acid. A high fiber diet, you're more likely to produce it. It has beneficial properties, but you're not really getting it in your diet. Same for the next one, you want to eat fiber to produce it yourself. And then acetic acid, so short, it's rarely categorized as fatty acid. Vinegar is a dilution of acetic acid. So it's not usually like vinegar. If you look at the nutrition facts, you're not going to see that it's a fat. It's so diluted and it's so short that your body doesn't see it really as a fat, even though chemistry wise, it typically is. But you can increase your fiber for benefits. And this is why the people who are like, take a shot of apple cider vinegar for benefits, etc., you're actually doing a really, really short chain fatty acid. I just like using vinegar and like acetic acid containing like coconut vinegar, red wine vinegar, etc., because I think it makes food taste better. I don't really care if it's helping me. I just like for food to taste good, and I think acid does that. All right, so watch out for biased sources. Now you can see here, like, love it, unsaturated polymono. Limit it, the heavy cream, butter, meats, etc. Lose it, artificial trans fat, like that's fine. Hydrogenated oils, and then tropical oils. Why does the American Heart Association rate coconut oil worse than meats and cheeses? Why would they do that? Why would the American Heart Association. Subsidies. Yeah, we know like grains and seeds and certain types of things that make these oils. Yeah, money. The soybean board, the canola association. If you look at the advisory board for the AHA, they're on it. So it's their competitor. So the advisory board is made up of coconut oil competitors. They have yet to produce anything that I've seen. Some of you that have like nutrition majors in undergrad, let me know if you've seen, or if anyone has seen the American Heart Association actually say why coconut oil is worse than animal products. What's his face? The guy with like red hair on YouTube has a funny video about it. He's obviously not like a not eunuch, but the guy with like long red hair. He's like, I've accidentally been healthy for years eating coconut. I don't know. I'll find it and I'll share it. Can't believe I can't think of his name right now. He's very pro San Diego, whoever he is. But but yeah, watch out for funding bias. Watch out. Some of this is like what we rely on. We rely on the AHA for a lot of our guidelines on how to treat patients, but they have, you know, where are coconuts grown? Where are tropical oils grown? Not here. Where are, you know, soybeans and avocados and stuff grown? Here. So the government, everything, they're not free of bias by any means, and these companies will pour money into lobbying our senators and everything. So, you know, go vote for the people who you think have your best interests. All right, cis unsaturated fatty acids, yay. These are the ones that make your brain happy, they make your nerves happy, they help with depression, they help with skin, they, you know, just, you gotta love them. And they're tasty. But, oh, sorry. As the name implies, it has a monounsaturated fat, has one single carbon-carbon double bond, mono, one unsaturated double bond, takes some of the hydrogens off the fat. They're found in olives, peanuts, other nuts, avocados, and their oils. Omega-9 is a mono unsaturated oil. Staples of the Mediterranean and Mediterranean diet. I don't know who it is. I tried emailing a bunch of faculty because last semester, the class above you, I had them for case-based or practicum, and everyone was recommending the Mediterranean diet. And I was like, who's teaching this? I want to know like what you've already said so I can like build on it. And everyone's like, nah, I teach DASH. So I don't know who is teaching the Mediterranean diet. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying apparently someone is highly encouraging the Mediterranean diet for treating chronic disease states in our faculty. If you find out who it is, shoot me an email. But yeah, it lowers heart disease despite intakes of these fats. People in the Mediterranean area have lower heart disease versus here, despite they, you know, eat a lot of olive oil. They eat a lot of these monounsaturated fats. However, if you look at the Mediterranean diet, isn't free of heart disease. So if you're looking at people who do have heart disease, compare them to the people who don't have heart disease, who don't have any precursors of heart disease. In the Mediterranean area, they still eat higher amounts of these fats. So they're not necessarily protective, and there could be a limit to when we actually lose our benefit. And dipping bread in olive oil started in San Francisco. It's not actually an Italian thing. Many Italians think it's weird. I was actually in Italy with a friend, and she asked for some olive oil for the bread, and people started calling us fat Americans, and they brought her an entire bottle of olive oil, and I still, to this day, I make so much fun of her. Like, what's some olive oil with that? I'm such a good friend. Anyways, moving on. Polyunsaturated, this means we have extra extra double bonds. Your body can't make these. You can only get them from your diet. So we talked about some of the saturated fats. Your body can make them from a high fiber diet. These are essential fats. Your brain, like 8% of your brain is omega acids. You need to consume some level of omega acids. Can improve your cholesterol profile, including lowering triglycerides. They have used supplements of omegas in people who have high triglycerides. And here is some of the chemistry for omega-3, 6, fine, dang, she fine. Okay, I'm so weird. You can see that they're actually really curly, and then omega-9 is not, except for linoleic acid, it's not curly. Yes, get low. I thought you would like that, Narc. All right. But yeah, you can see the 3 comes from the methyl end. In here, it's when the first double bond occurs. So these 3s have them at the 3rd, these have them at the 6th, so that's how they get their name. And then oleic acid gets it at the 9th. I am flattered that you called me Gen Z, but I am way too old. Actually, that song came out when I was in high school, and I was a goody-goody in high school. I didn't curse, so I changed it from to the window to the walrus, to the sweat drop down the fin, all the fishes swim. I was awful. People still, anytime they hear that song, they still text me. They're like, thought of you. Oh. All right. EPA, we're talking about omega-3s. EPA, DHA, and ALA. EPA is thought to help reduce inflammation and fight depression. Important things. DHA makes up 8% of the brain weight. Your brain needs this, especially growing babies, infants. If you're a breastfeeding mom like I am, you have to take a lot of omega-3 to make sure that your infant's brain grows. Luckily, my daughter, fish is her favorite food. So she gets a ton of DHA now that she eats normal things too. But yeah, you definitely need this if you're growing in any way. And then you need some just to keep your brain and your nerves nourished. ALA, your body can convert a small percent, about 5%, to DHA and EPA. And then I know Joe Rogan is like a big thing that like people are now saying we can eliminate dating options if they watch Joe Rogan, etc. I don't watch Joe Rogan, but I have friends who do. And when I was vegan and like I've been plant-based for several years of my life, I'm not currently right now. I got a lot of clips of Chris Kresser, the paleo proponent, on Joe Rogan, and he was talking about specifically omega-3s, and he was like, you have to eat so much flaxseed oil, like you're having to just put down tablespoons and tablespoons and tablespoons to make DHA, so that's why you shouldn't be plant-based, etc. Okay, no, because there are plant-based sources of DHA and EPA, but that is a flawed thought, is that you can get enough DHA on flaxseed unless you're willing to eat a ton of flaxseed, because only about 5% actually converts to the DHA and EPA that you need, and then like it's even a smaller percent of that 5% is the pure DHA. So that's why fish oil is often seen as the ideal source. However, anytime you are recommending a supplement and the primary source is animal-based, you can always find an alternative, because that animal has to get it from somewhere. We already talked about B12 in our micronutrients and how that actually comes from bacteria. And there are several, and like a lot of the animals that we eat now are actually supplemented with B12. So they're supplemented themselves. So why can't you just supplement yourself as a human? Same with, you know, where do the fish get it? They get it from algae. And so if you're a vegan, vegetarian, or an environmentalist who doesn't support the way that fish are harvested, or if you hate having fish burps after you take fish oil, or if you're allergic to fish, or if your religion doesn't see fish as a clean source, algae is another option. Several studies have shown that the increase in DHA levels when taking an algae-based supplement is comparative to fish oil, even if you started off with extremely low levels. I'm from Arkansas. Even before I went plant-based, there's not good fish there, and I just never cared about my omega-3s. Even after I started learning about it, I'm like, I feel fine. I'm not depressed, and you know, whatever. I don't need to take fish oil. And then I was plant-based for a while, and that's when I started really getting into nutrition. And oh my gosh, I felt night and day different when I started supplementing with algae-based omega-3. But it is a consideration that it is really hard to get without supplementation for our plant-based friends. But yeah, the fish get it from microalgae, and you have another option. And here you can see the breakdown of several. This is not an exhaustive list. There are several other brands, supplements, etc. But if you ask me, do I think you should supplement omega-3 if you are plant-based? You know, I personally am a fan of it. You don't have to, but a lot of the high profile former vegans reported benefit. Like if you followed at all the 2019 like exodus from vegan YouTube, all of them were like, they were like, I had to start eating fish because I wasn't getting my omega-3s, etc. And a lot of them admitted they were not supplementing omega-3s. Their mental health improved, their skin improved, all of these things improved. And a lot of the people who remained on the vegan side of YouTube were like, why didn't you just supplement all this time? Why didn't you just start supplementing? Why did you have to start eating fish? And it became this huge fight, and I just like got out my popcorn. So it was originally promoted to prevent and treat heart disease, and then heart health organizations like AHA have updated their guidance to say it may lower mortality after a heart attack. So if you've had a heart attack, you can go ahead and take it, but it doesn't necessarily prevent a heart attack. But as we've already discussed, EPA and DHA are important for more than just your heart health. They're also important for brain health, mental health, gut health, eye health, pregnancy and nursing. If you are pregnant or nursing and you are plant-based, I 100% recommend some kind of DHA supplement. Even if you're not plant-based, I still recommend making sure you are either eating a ton of low mercury fish or supplementing skin health, etc. A lot of people said in the questionnaire that they were considering a plant-based diet or on a plant-based diet or like experimenting with plant-based, and they wanted to know, like, do they need any supplements? Or do they need to watch out for anything? So I'm trying to include a lot of that. What brand do I use? I've used a few, and it depends on what I can find for a cheap price that I think is acceptable. I have used the omega-3s before, and I've used Nature's, one of the Nature's one. Right now, I eat a ton of fish. I eat a lot of fish right now. So right now, I'm not supplementing unless it's a day that, or like I haven't had fish in a while. But yeah, previously I did not eat fish. What about algae oil? This has been promoted as like the best oil for your heart because, you know, algae, omega-3, whatever. And it's like 75% less saturated fat than olive oil. And it's so expensive, but they're like, oh, but it's worth it because omegas, whatever. The omegas are taken out. I mean, you can cook with it. It has a neutral flavor, a high smoke point. So if culinarily you're just drawn to it because you don't want to be, you know, it has way less of a taste that adds to food than olive oils or like coconut oils, etc. Then, you know, go for it. But don't go for it for the omegas because those are taken out because you can't heat well with those. It has a high smoke point because the omegas were taken out. And then olive oils, you can see here it's like 75% less saturated fat than olive oil. Olive oil is mostly, you know, monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. It does have like 0.5% stearic acid and then like 7.5 to 20 palmitic acid, but it's, you know, it's not a high saturated fat oil anyway. So if you want to use it culinarily, not because of the omegas. Should you supplement even if your triglycerides are low, but you don't like fish in your diet? Again, I'm never going to tell you like you should or shouldn't do something unless perhaps like in a pregnancy sense where like absolutely. But if you're not pregnant and your triglycerides are low, you don't like fish, remember it's more than just heart health. It's also mental health, skin health, etc. If you are really happy with your mental health, if you're happy with your skin health, then it's not something that you should have to experiment with. But if you are unhappy with one of the things that omega-3s can help with, I think it doesn't hurt to try an omega-3 supplement and see if it helps. I have way more energy. I have a much more like just positive outlook on life and everything if I have a lot of omega-3 in my either diet or supplementation regimen. So it's something to try, something to consider if you know, you're struggling with even anxiety, depression, etc., it's not going to cure those things. And we shouldn't start like treating it like an essential oil, like, oh, you're going to stop your antidepressant if you take them, but it could help. So, you know, use that. Is there any benefits to supplementing with algae versus fish oil, such as quicker absorption? It's not found to be statistically significantly different supplementing between the two. Your omega level acids, as like the milligrams that you're getting between the two, are comparable. It's just if you don't like, you know, fish burps, or if you want to look into how fish oil is harvested and that's not up your alley, algae oil is a difference. Sorry, my daughter just walked in. Again, hello. Hi, you want to help mommy with the last 10 minutes? Okay. Okay, omega-6 is good in theory. We should aim for a 4-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. So it sounds like, hey, we should be getting, you know, we should really be looking out for omega-6, right? Wrong. Americans tend to get 10-to-1 or 50-to-1 as opposed to this 4-to-1. So we should focus on, you know, limiting our omega-6 intake and increasing our omega-3 intake. For those who aren't here in the beginning, this won't happen often. Our nanny has strep throat, so she's around more right now. Why is proportion important? They compete for the same enzymes in mammals, and you don't have the enzyme that is needed to convert the two. So in order to use all the omega that you're eating, you have to make sure it's a high enough prevalence of the total omega in your body to utilize omega-3s. So we want to watch for our omega-4 or our omega-3 and omega-6 ratios is another important issue. Even if you're supplementing with omega-3, you have to keep in mind how much omega-6 you're getting in your diet to see if you, that's another thing. If your diet is pretty high in omega-6, you might be more likely needing to supplement omega-3. Hey, just like a few more minutes, okay? So what do you want? With this? Hey, babe. Okay, I guess I don't know where he went. So what are our omega-6 fatty acids? Polyunsaturated fats found in soybeans, corn, safflower, sunflower, nuts, seeds, meat. Oh, she's gonna fuss. Okay, I apologize for the distraction. Polyunsaturated fats found in soybeans, corn, safflower, sunflower, seeds, meat, poultry, fish, eggs. Ratios can be improved by limiting the processed version of the above, such as corn oils, etc., and increasing fatty fish intake or algae supplementation. I have seen some people like add actual just like ground algae to smoothies, etc. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a supplementation in the form of a capsule, etc. So a lot of your dietary sources contain both, so supplementation may be needed if you are plant-based. And then monounsaturated or omega-9, we already talked a little bit about monounsaturated, but oleic acid, we love her. Nutrition labels will sometimes list, like I got corn nuts from the pumpkin patch, and I noticed on the nutrition label, it's like one of the following high oleic acids were used to make these corn nuts. And that's just what they're using to try to make them sound important, but it is very important for both brain health and myelin sheaths. If you don't consume enough of it, this one your body can make some of, but it doesn't necessarily make enough if you're not getting enough from your diet. It will basically make enough for your brain, but not necessarily enough for your brain and your nerves. So you might start having nerve problems if you don't get enough omega-9 in your diet. Since your body can make some of it, it's considered partially essential. We'll talk about that more when we get to like essential amino acids, etc. But essential means your body can't make it, and then partially essential means your body doesn't make enough. You have to get some from your diet. Top sources: olive oil, nuts, nut oils, avocados, avocado oil. Moving on, any questions before we move on to fat? All right, oh, not move on to fat, move on to protein. There is the omega-369 supplementation OTC 1-cap POQ day with food. I need to look into the breakdown of how much 3, 6, or 9 is actually in that. It would need to have a good ratio. It would need to have much, much more 3 to 6. This is something that, yeah, I'm gonna have to look into. I'll look into it and we can discuss Monday. Shoot me an email after class, remind me. Well, I mean, in like 4 minutes. Protein, amino acids, organic compounds composed of nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen with a variable side chain. So this R here, I'm pointing with my finger, like you can see that. This R here is different, but everything else is the same, and that is the chemistry structure of an amino acid. We could spend quite a bit of time on how the different R groups affect our health, but I'm not a chemist and we don't have time for that, so let's just not. Human bodies require the use of 20 different amino acids to grow and function, some of which we have to get from our diet, and those are the ones listed in pink here. The conditionally non-essential, just like we talked about with omega-9 fatty acids, your body can produce some of this on its own, but not enough. So if you're like sick, or if you have if you've been burned, if you have a higher nutritional need for healing, etc., you likely do need to get more from your diet. And then non-essential, our body can make that, you know, we're cool with that. But the essential amino acids, whenever we talk about proteins, and this is something that when we start talking about plant-based proteins, which we'll probably have to get to Monday because we're running out of time today, there are some of these essential acids that we need to make sure our plant-based friends are getting, but you're totally able to do it. But let's see how far we get. We have 3 more minutes. Can/do vegans get enough protein without eating meat? I remember when I was plant-based, I got a lot of these memes because everyone was like, "Oh, what about your protein?" And it's like no one cared about my protein until I went plant. Like they didn't care how much meat I ate until I like didn't eat meat. So it's gonna seem like I'm hating on plant-based diets at first, but in the end, I'm gonna come around and say like how this isn't a huge deal and how there's actually benefits for plant-based proteins. But we do need to keep in mind we don't absorb proteins the same from all foods. This is the source for this chart is the World Health Organization report on protein and amino acid requirements in human. The fiber content, while we love fiber, she's great. We need to also keep in mind that it limits absorption of certain things, and that includes protein. There's slightly less protein absorption. So if you see our American mixed diet that's high in meats and dairy, true digestibility is about 96%, where if we eat beans or Brazilian mixed diet that has a lot more like the Indian rice and beans, those tend to be lower. So you can be comparing the grams of proteins that you're eating in these, but that doesn't mean you're digesting all of those proteins and actually utilizing all those proteins. For that reason, the World Health Organization recommends that the safe level intake this is not for bodybuilders or athletes, this is just for humans, is 0.83 grams per kilograms per day for proteins with a protein digestibility correlated amino acid score value, or PDCAAS, of 1. And you can see, so if you're eating milk protein, egg whites, whey, etc., or even soy, then it's that 0.83 grams per kilogram. But then you might need to adjust some as we get down. Beef is 92, chickpeas 78, black beans 75. Black beans are really high in fiber, etc. You can see another chart here. Seitan, one of my favorite plant-based proteins. The true like PDCAAS is pretty low. Wheat gluten is made of seitan. I just liked the memes that were like, "Hail seitan," but it's not. It's the food, seitan. Anyways, yeah. So we need to keep in mind that you actually need to eat a higher amount of grams of protein if you are getting your protein from plant-based sources, unless it's soy protein. Soy protein is fairly comparable, but some plant-based dieters avoid soy as well. So keep that in mind. That is not insurmountable. It's just a consideration. Vegans may need a little extra protein because proteins in whole foods don't seem to be as well digested. However, the difference is small. For someone 140-pound omnivore, they would need 54 grams, while a vegan would require about 60 grams. And that's from an RD that is also vegan. And then we'll talk about our comparisons for like if you're getting enough calories, you're getting enough protein. We're going to talk about, are we getting enough essential amino acids on Monday? Again, for those of you that are plant-based, I've been plant-based for years. I will come back and say the pros of plant-based proteins as well. So let me know if you have any questions. I'll hang on for the next 10 minutes or so. And then anyone with questions can ask them. We will finish the rest of this lecture on Monday and then quickly go over micronutrients. The rest of this lecture will be new material, obviously. So there will be some new material Monday, but any questions? Do we want to do one more drawing? I won't do 3 drawings a day normally, but do we want to? Where's my box? Okay. I should have had Riley draw one while she was in here. All right, I'm not looking. Diana, are you here today? You have to be present to win. All right, we'll do a backup. All right, I know you're here. I saw you talking earlier.
Yay!
Right, so email me. I'll email you, Chance, and then Buddy from Kahoot, and y'all will get to pick. Again, I don't have enough prizes to do 3 every day, but you know, we're hyped because I'm back in class. It's gonna be first come, first serve, Chance. So email quick. All right, any questions, comments, concerns? I hope you have a nice weekend too. Thank you. Thank you.
Wait, Dr. Barr.
Uh-huh.
Can I ask you about the omega-3 thing some more?
Sure.
Okay, so like if you're gonna supplement, like just a regular supplement, what's kind of like the dose you should be going for?
It depends on a lot of factors. What is it? The generic, let me find it. So basically, like the fish oil comes in the like 1 gram, and then they have like the smaller ones because the like 1 gram ones are pretty big. And then they go up to like 1,200. It's all based on like you could start at the generic like 1 gram or 1,200. But then they have like the double ones or the mini ones, and then the you're just basically like if you never ever eat fish and you do have high triglycerides, they tend to go up to 2 grams and above. So it depends on, are you taking it for a medicinal need such as high triglycerides? I know some mental health providers that if they get a plant-based patient, they automatically start them on the plant-based, the algae-based omega-3s. Like just like if you come for mental health services of any kind, they start you on those, and they tend to work their way up. And then as other like behavioral cognitive therapy, etc., starts helping as well, they can step back down, and then find it's kind of like a titration. system since you're not eating any fish. And then it's also dependent, again, like right now, I don't supplement on the days that I eat fish. I do like it's a mail service of like fish that aren't cut correctly. And so they can't sell them in stores because they didn't cut them correctly, but they're still edible. So I try to take that fish that would otherwise be thrown out. And so I do like a mail service of that fish like once a week. So we eat a ton of fish because technically, it's fish that would have gone to waste otherwise. And I like fish. So right now I don't supplement that often unless, we're going to be out of the weekend and we don't get the box that week, then I'm not eating fish that week and I'll supplement. So it's all dependent on, also on weeks that I eat a lot of omega-6 fatty acids. Like if my diet is not near as clean, if I'm, brunching hard, if friends are in town, whatever happened pre-pandemic, or if I'm just like eating my feelings because we're in a pandemic, then I supplement more to improve my ratio. So there's so much more, but I would just start with the generic 1 gram if you're doing fish oil, and then the recommended dose on some of the plant-based ones you take 2, so they're smaller. So whatever the recommended serving size is on the omega ones. And then if you're working with a mental health provider or a heart specialist for triglycerides or something, obviously follow their recommendations.
Okay, that makes sense. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, y'all.
Dr. PHAR, I have a question.
Yes.
So for your advisee workshop, is it for the advisees that you currently have as a P1, that you got as a P1, or is it for everyone?
It's okay. So what happened is I have my usual 18 and I designed this for them. But last semester, because of, I think, like online learning, there were Dr. Boyce emailed me. There were a bunch of people who couldn't meet with their true advisor, so they met with me instead. And then some people emailed me saying like, I liked the vibe, can I keep coming, whatever. And I was like, sure, but then I forgot to add them to the email list. And so that was kind of like if you want to join, but anyone can join. My advisees can bring their friends. You can join if you want. I'm not trying to steal people's advisees is the main thing. Like, I don't want it to like come out that I'm overstepping and I'm like trying to take over advising from other faculty. I'm not trying to step on any faculty toes, but if you want to come, if it's something that you think you'd benefit from, just shoot me an email and I can email you. I'm going to be emailing my true advisees, the ones that were assigned to me, later today, probably this evening, because I got lots of meetings this afternoon. But once I get the list of who all wants emails. But yeah, if you're interested, you can come. I'm not telling you not to see your regular advisor though.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.